Happy Thursday, friends, and welcome to this, another edition of our Mystery Wine blind tasting here at Field & Main on this gorgeous, beautiful late summer night. I look this way because I'm looking outside at the ominous clouds rolling in with a thunderstorm potentially on the horizon, and yet it's beautiful, a light breeze, no real humidity, a gorgeous night. We have corn and tomatoes, summer squashes aplenty. We have figs and mushrooms, and we have some of the fall squashes still coming in. So this is all together, I would say, with probably many caveats, this is probably the best time of year. I mean, it's got all the produce you want and yet not the heat that helped produce it. And so it is a tremendous time of year. And it is the finest night of the week because we get to spend some time blind tasting wine together. Welcome back, Kathy. We're glad to have you back. I hope your shoulder is recovering well. And Susan, hello to you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm showing notes that are about 11 others of you that are peeking in too. And welcome to all of you. I'm sure as you chime in, we can acknowledge you. There we go. Trish, Andy, and Kathy, per usual, you are our standards for sure in joining us week in and week out, along with some others like Jonathan. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. And also, I agree, great to see you a couple weeks ago. Susan, you've jumped ahead, huh? You're already in the tasting notes. This wine is yummy. It jumped out. I just opened it, and Julie provided me with a little half liter decanter, and so I kind of dropped it into the carafe, and it jumped out with some primary fruit and some very grapey quality, but I haven't gotten into this yet. So we'll get there, I guess. But I'm glad to hear it's yummy. That's always a positive. Jan is here because Bobby popped by just moments ago. I got a chance to see him as he picked up the bottle. And I'm so glad to hear your shoulder's doing well, Kathy. That's good. I mean, at the very least, you have another arm and a different arm that can work to lift a glass and bring it to your nose and then lips. So that's a great thing. And Glenn, hello. It was great to see you earlier too. And I will forward you some information so that you can pass that stuff we talked about on to me. John and Ann are here this evening. Ann, I think I caught a tiny glimpse of you as you were departing. You were there ahead of me on Sunday at the farmer's market. We got some of those great figs I was just talking about, some more of those tomatoes. Jose Medina, who's the gentleman who's at the farmer's market in the Plains on Sunday, had some beautiful green beans and wax beans, and my apologies to the rest of you who might have been going there for those because I bought them all. They're now on our menu this evening. So, and Chris and Courtney are here. Hello to you guys. Rob, Kathy, and Shannon. And Candy's with us, which is great. Erica, hello to you. Great to see you recently too. And yeah, Kathy, I have no doubt that you would find your way, ambidextrous or not, into wine. You would not be deterred by a simple shoulder issue. It's but a mere flesh wound, and you can persevere through that. Kevin, Candy, Jill, Bev, like you promised last week, you're in Wisconsin and you've brought us with you. That's tremendous. Thank you so much for that. And Kristen is here. The Sanders are with us. So, all right, guys, gals, those of you here in Virginia, those of you in Wisconsin, and perhaps other points further afield, what are we doing? What do we got? We've got a yummy wine. We know that. Thank you, Susan. And Ariel and Matt, thank you very much for joining us, too. You're in D.C. This one looks great. Good. What do we see? What kind of color are we looking at? Are we looking at something that's purple, something that's red, ruby? Are we looking at something that's got a tawny characteristic? Is it consistent in color from the center of the wine? For your camera here, from the center of the wine all the way to the rim? Does it have that same consistency, or is there a difference at the rim here as opposed to what you find in the center? When you swirl it, what are you finding? This formation of legs or tiers, how are they shaping up? Kathy's noting that it's pretty dark pigmented, so it's a little bit richer in its profile perhaps. And the Kestenbaums are with us tonight. Good evening to you. We're just getting started, so no problem. We were just going through hellos. So hello to you. And yes, Jonathan's deeper in color. It's got more of kind of a purplish hue, right? But it is dark kind of black cherry color. So it has a ruby element, but it's dark. So a more pigmented ruby quality, but it's purer, deeper, and richer. So that grapey note that I picked up on the nose right as it was poured had me thinking about some things like Zinfandel. So already for me, right as we talk about, we don't want to rush into a judgment, into your final call, but if there's some cues, if there are some clues that pop out that really take you somewhere quickly, make note of them. They help you in the blind tasting realm, especially with folks like yourselves who are more experienced and have some reference points. It's really possible, especially early on, where you might know only a few grapes and a few wines, and you smell something that reflects one of those, and because you get trapped in that kind of tractor bean experience of, oh my gosh, it has to be that, you miss out on other cues. But for those of you that have been tasting a while, there's a potential that this should help you to think about some things. And Candy's noting, Susan Rather's noting a medium purple, a clearish rim, which indicates a little bit potentially higher alcohol or warmer space. Kristen's saying a little garnet, fairly slow legs, so there's a richer quality to that, the higher robustness to it. Kathy's giving us a nice option, a series of options with respect to varietals. So Syrah, Zinfandel, Petit Verdot, Petit Syrah, absolutely, Malbec, Teraldigo, Pinotage, and Alicante Boucher. The legs are, they're forming, they form and they are complete, and then a few of them sheet, and then a few of them are really taking their time, going really slowly. Again, for those of you that might be just joining us, this is an indication of most often some form of sugar. And by that I could mean residual sugar, so i.e. think of syrup or honey, you having an actual sugared characteristic, or the alcohol that results by way of fermentation in that sugar, and so you could have kind of a glycerol element. So you could have a higher alcohol forming element. And you don't know that, whether it's residual sugar or whether it's alcohol derived from sugar based on appearance, but you know enough to know there is something going on here with a higher amount of alcohol, or they've left residual sugar. And so you have to figure that out. So as you make that note, you move forward. So if you saw something that kind of sheeted down without real tears or legs, wasn't real prominent, you'd think it would be potentially lower in alcohol and likely not something that is either high alcohol, i.e. robust wine from a warmer climate, or a residual sugared wine. You think of something that's light and bright and vibrant and easy. And so with this wine, we are thinking about something that's got a bit more texture to it, a little bit more robustness, probably a warmer climate ideally. It has that grapey profile, a deeper, darker color, which, as then Jonathan says, might be more New World, feels more New World. He makes a caveat there, though, importantly, that, you know, with what's going on with other winemakers around the world. I was doing a little tasting this morning, or this afternoon with my team. I just pulled out a bottle and did a blind tasting for the team this afternoon, and said, you know, you're looking at general clues, but Old World would be more acidic and a little bit more complexity. Generally, New World, more primary fruit, not quite as high acidity. But you have Old World producers in the New World and New World producers in the Old World, and the lines blur for sure. So we don't know that yet. But in terms of building our profile, right now, we're looking to see and confirm, could this be Syrah, Zinfandel, Petit Verdot, Petit Syrah, Malbec, Teraldigo, Pinotage, Alicante Boucher from the New World? That's what's sort of being indicated by looking at this. And that's the beauty of this blind tasting thing. We haven't even smelled it yet, although I've gotten some aromas just by pouring it. And we know all of that, and that's a really cool thing. So let's smell it and see what else we can learn about this particular wine. And as I was sharing with the team earlier, and as we've talked about many, many times, we're looking for a few things. F-E-W. Fruit, earth, wood. Fruit characteristics. Is it berry fruit, red or black? What's the condition of that fruit? Is it citrus fruit? Is it tree fruit, stone fruit, tropical fruit? And then what characteristics do you find about that fruit? Is it young, kind of tart, immature fruit? Is it ripe fruit? Is it raisinated, dried, cooked? Earth kind of stands in for earthen elements, but also anything that's sort of not fruited. And then wood, how does wood present itself in the wine? You can actually smell wood, but oftentimes cedared quality, for example, might come about for a way of French wine, but you would also get some spice, holiday baking spices. You could get some vanillin element from some American oak. So how does the wood present itself in that acronym? So Swanbergs, welcome. I'm still talking about you from last week and your ability to throw out Bobal and my inability to recognize that you had something going there because I've not tried enough Bobal. So welcome. We're excited to have you with us this evening. Jonathan, you're saying it's boozy, which goes to, or at least confirms what we saw in the wine and the legs, right? Candy's picking up some red licorice, jammy stuff. So the fruit is confectionery. It's sweetened. Kathy's picking up some cassis. Get a little flowers. Jalapeno is often an indicator, right, of something pyrazine. So maybe a Cabernet Sauvignon element. Sometimes Carmenere, some graphite. Ripe dark fruit, a cooked fruit profile, some cherry. Great, guys. This is very expressive, right? It's not muted. It's quite expressive. These descriptors are flowing. Candy, you're saying you're picking up some Italian notes, like Primitivo Italian notes. What Italian wines in particular, if there is one, or are some? Blackberry. So we're in a range here of some cherry, so reddish fruit to black fruit in the blackberry. Robert, you're picking up some tertiary elements too, which is great. The earthy elements, the secondary elements, mushrooms and earth, cooked fruit, and that alcohol burn. And the Sanders are picking up like an 85% dark cacao. So really more about the cocoa, not necessarily about a sweet chocolate. So there's this richness that way. There's sort of a sweet fruit and this dark cocoa quality and alcohol. There is a burn on the nose already there. Black fruit, fig, this is great. So deep dark, and those varietals that Kathy threw out earlier and that we were kind of centering on a bit are in keeping with that profile. Chris is here, and Peggy, they joined us wonderfully last week twice as they stayed at the Ashby Inn, our old haunts, and then ventured over for dinner twice with Gustavo. Hello, sir. Gustavo is a great sommelier. So we will turn to Gustavo as he's tasting this wine. And Gustavo, any question we have will come to you. Jonathan, you thought as I did, just as I cracked the bottle, poured it into the decanter, I smelled this graping element, and I thought, man, it's probably, at least we should consider Zinfandel. Shiraz from Oz is absolutely worthy of consideration. Candy, you're picking up very earthy notes. Underneath that fruit component for you, or is it just the earthy note? And Jan Nelson, hello. Tasting is now complete. Jan is here. We've got both Jans. Without both, it's not a real tasting, right? I'm getting a little bit of that earth. One of the things that we talked about last time we had some Australian wine was the eucalyptus, minty, menthol element. Anybody picking that up? Remember we had the Shiraz Tempranillo that Tony threw into there. I'm searching for it, and I think I'm not necessarily finding it. There's that alcohol tinge at the back is sort of kind of reminiscent of the feeling of menthol, but I don't think it's really mentholy. Burnt caramel, nice. So these are descriptors perhaps, the burnt caramel element and some of that spice of some kind of oak usage, and maybe more of a toast, a heavier toast on the oak. I've been swirling too, Erica, and just now, like some of you, some of those earthen elements are coming beyond that fruit. There's that punch of fruit first. And yeah. All right, so we're quite fruited. Showing earthy elements. Do you get the same experience on the palate? And what do you taste when you do? Rainstorm's moving in. I hope our reception maintains. But a bit of caramel coming for Kathy, and that burnt caramel element from Erica. So we're getting that note, which is probably an indication of some kind of oak usage. And Kathy is now echoing Susan's earlier comment. Hers was yummy, Kathy's is damn delicious. So we're happy with this. Okay, so where are we at with acid? The acid profile, the tannin. the weight. Is this wine medium, high acid? Is this wine very tannic? Is the tannin experience lasting for a period of time? Is this wine dry? And then what about the texture of this wine? Is it a robust wine? Is it a very full-bodied wine? A medium-bodied wine? A lighter-bodied wine? Tannins are present. Are they soft for you? Kristen, you're saying soft. They aren't huge. There's a brusqueness though about this wine in the finish that I think my first sip was confusing with tannin. There's an astringency. There's almost a little whole cluster stemminess to this. I mean, when I say whole cluster stemminess, I mean that they're pressing the whole cluster, and some of that stem tannin, some of the seed tannin is in here. And that's kind of that drying sensation, that astringency can also be confused with tannin sometimes. It is probably a tannin element, but it's a different tannin than just sort of the grape tannin. And so the tannins are a bit more pronounced than soft for me, and I guess some of you are finding that too. Kathy is, and Glenn's getting a medium or mild acid profile. Not a huge acidic element. It's more about the tannin and about that kind of astringency at the finish. The tannins are medium, maybe medium. Just medium, settled medium. Here comes Susan, which she does a great job each time, just kind of laying it out. But tannins medium but soft, acid medium, body medium, finish medium, alcohol medium, and dry. I might push the alcohol just a tiny bit higher. There's a zing still, so it's medium plus and kind of alcohol. And sometimes you get a little whole cluster element in a wine to try to keep it a little bit fresher. Not quite as extracted, and so you find that often being used as a technique for Syrah. So that would also potentially give us something like Shiraz, which doesn't always see a whole cluster situation, but so the alcohol element might be not quite as high for Susan. It isn't burning in the back of the throat. That's what I was looking for there and pausing for a minute. It definitely blew off on the nose. It was present. I mean, you saw that kind of subtle variation of meniscus, kind of wateriness there, but I'm not getting a huge heat. Chris is saying New World. Is that what Gustavo's saying too? Because we're now putting Gustavo on the hot seat any chance we get. Uruguay and Tanat, which is cool. So let's throw that in the mix. 13.5, okay. 13.5, 14 really in red wines of today, especially real robust ones, isn't necessarily high alcohol. Sangiovese, Candy's asking. I don't know about it being Sangiovese. I mean, maybe, I guess. There was a discussion earlier about some Italian wine being of interest, and cool. I don't know, Susan, or sorry, excuse me, Candy. Sangiovese. I would be expecting it to be a little bit less tannic in profile, but it could be more of a concentrated element of that. If we're talking about Tanat, that tannin makes some sense. Candy and Jill is saying that a heavy Zin, and I think that's an absolute option for a California Zin. Could head to southern Italy and something like Primitivo. Kathy's leaning a little bit toward the Old World, which is, but Old World in what way? Not high acid, not particularly super high alcohol, not rustic though. So again, to the earlier comment about sort of a New World kind of presentation, I think that maybe was Johnny's comment, right? That this might be a New World presentation in the Old World. It has some New World characteristic. It's not particularly high acid, right? It's not particularly high. I like the Primitivo idea quite a bit. For those that aren't aware, perhaps, there's some thought that Primitivo is linked to Zinfandel, or I should say that Zinfandel might have found its origins from Primitivo. Chris is liking the Primitivo call. Merlot blend. So let's work some of the flavors again. We talked about them on the nose. What are you getting on the palate? Is anybody else getting a little funk at this point coming off of this? And by funk, there's this, there's a cured meat element. There's almost a hot, like a smoked hot doggy cured meat element. Jonathan's throwing out those weird blends from Puglia or Cupertino. Yeah, I mean, Tony this afternoon said the next couple, or among the next couple wines you're going to encounter are going to be tough. So, and that's after talking about Bobal. So absolutely, I mean, all bets could be off. It might not be something as easy as a nice California Zin. There's this, yeah, pinotage. Thank you, Erica, too. That was one of Kathy's notes earlier. Hot dog water, Chris. I absolutely say that as a descriptor often for wines. And I cannot figure out if that's the oak element, if that's some kind of yeast fermentation kinetic that happens in the wine, and I just don't know how to pinpoint that, but I pick that up on wines occasionally. I find them sometimes in Austria. I find them in Virginia. But a dirty water dog is sort of what I'm smelling on the nose. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, there's that sort of almost artificial smoke, forced meat, hot dog cure kind of meatiness that's coming out of this wine that, I mean, certainly I've had before in Merlot-based blends from this state, from Virginia, and also from Austria and other points. Carignan. Erica, thank you for that. Yeah, maybe. That sort of rustic, powerful tannin. That meatiness. So southern France, Carignan, perhaps. Carignana from Spain. So, Pinotage, Merlot blend, Carignana, Zinfandel, Tannat from Uruguay. We're all over the map. We're all over the place. Let's consult the great oracle of Gustavo. Gustavo, if we were talking to you and you didn't have this wine in front of you and we said there's red fruit, dark fruit, there's moderate plus tannin, there's a potential for some higher alcohol here, but it's not necessarily showcasing it on the palate. It has medium acidity, maybe a little bit lower medium. The tannins are a little bit both grape and maybe stemmy, astringent. Could we be talking about Malbec? Could we be talking about Petit Verdot? Could we be talking about Tannat? Are we talking about New World, Old World? This is a wine that certainly blends the two and blurs the lines of definition between the two. A Syrah blend, Carignan, Sanso, Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, something of that sort. You know, I am 100% not sure. You could make a great argument that it is Malbec, for example, as Susan's saying. There's that grapey kind of purple fruit, that little bit of floral note that we picked up early on. It's not really prominent still. And I think I agree with Gustavo that it's not Spanish. So Gustavo, for those of you that don't know, has dined here a couple times and has run over the years a number of fantastic Spanish restaurants and knows Spanish wine very well. A tremendous sommelier and restaurant operator. So if he's saying it's not Spanish, I'm good with that. We're not going to say Spanish. So not Carignana, maybe we go southern France if it's Carignan. 3 in a row for Spain. You never know with Tony and Julie. They could do anything they want with this, and they've proven that time and time again, going way back to the beginning where we had Zinfandel and Tannat together, right, from Uruguay. Impossible calls, but nevertheless, delicious, yummy, damn delicious and yummy, excuse me, Kathy, wines that they put out there. And I appreciate you backing me up, Susan, with the 100% not sure. And if it is Spain, then we learned something. That's okay. And we've had an enjoyable Spanish wine in the mix. It has let's talk about this again. We have ripeness on the nose. We have indicators of ripeness. We have pretty rustic tannin that is fairly prominent, medium to medium plus. We have a medium acid, medium body, as Susan outlined, right? There's a drying sensation and astringency on the palate. The fruit profile is red, black, and ripe. It's got a freshness at the back end. It's got this nice, fresh kind of lift to the finish, and it has a meatiness, albeit a dirty water hot dog, which has us all confused. So who wants to help us kind of start to narrow this down, and how do we do that? Jonathan's offering that could this be a GSM from the Rhone? And I know for myself, a lot of times I'm just kind of defaulting to that. It's like, maybe it's a blend. If it's a blend, maybe it's the Rhone. It's France. Ariel, you're thinking French too then. So heading toward that Southern Rhone, some of that grapiness, some of these characteristics, the Carignan element, that sort of sinewy tannin, could come from there. So maybe we're drinking something like, it's a lot less primary than it was right out of the bottle. And for those of you that have had this open for a while, is it more or less fruited at this point? Has it kind of dropped that fruit and gone into the this earthen realm? There's now like a sulfury element, like a matchstick getting lit and put out. Kathy's venturing toward New World then with PV. Are you staying in the state here in Virginia with Petit Verdot? For those who got me just looking to the side, I was just bottle checking, just page out of the Chris Shirley book. This could be a PV bottle. It's a Bordeaux bottle. It's a high-shouldered bottle, right? You're not supposed to do that, but I just did. So I was looking to see, is it a sloped bottle side, a Burgundy bottle side? Because we probably wouldn't find Petit Verdot in that. A PV Merlot blend. So not New World, but Petit Verdot. So where are you going with a PV varietal, or are you thinking a PV blend from somewhere else? So Kristen's got this wine open for a while, the Sanders do. And 90 minutes, less fruity, less tannins, less acidic than what we're describing. So it's evolved into a place where some of that's kind of softened. And Chris, I have no doubt you did. You checked the bottle for sure. I think that's one of the plays right off the bat. This one, though, was given to me in this. In the last couple of weeks, I've been opening the bottle and just looking at the bottle. And so this is pretty cool wine, because it's leaving us, I think, albeit most of us at least, pretty stumped. By minute 21, 22, we're kind of centering in on something. And the wine shifts and changes into a gear, and we start to kind of make our way. This is minute 29, and I really don't know. Let's start to do what we have to do when you get to the point where you don't know. What do you take out? Because maybe you can't center on what you know, what you think it is, but what can you absolutely rule out or be comfortable enough ruling out to get you to a spot? And we've got France, PV in Italy. Kathy, I think there are some people playing with it, but I don't know much about it as something there. I mean, you might have like a Petit Verdot that's grown in Bulgari Coast or something like that that has something going on, or somebody else who just decided to grow it, and Tony would find it. Susan is sticking with Southern Italy and Primitivo 2018. I like that. So Primitivo's in there. We had Zinfandel discussions. We had a little bit of old world discussion. Some of that more rustic kind of warm Mediterranean tannin coming through. Primitivo Italy, solid. Points all around. Good idea. France, coming from the Burses. The Swanbergs are plum and black cherry. Could lead you to Petit Verdot. Still think it's a blend. That plum element might give you an indication of Merlot, so a PV Merlot blend. Are you guys, Jeff and Adrian, thinking about Virginia then? Or would you take it somewhere else? Bordeaux, Merlot dominant with a little bit of Petit Verdot. You're hard pressed to find a lot of Petit Verdot put into blends in Bordeaux, but that may change over time as it provides ripeness and power. And yes, to the idea of Southern France, Susan and Kathy, with that side conversation of the fact that really it's an easy place to go because it does give you a lot of options. It's not a cab. Thank you, Jonathan. Agreed. Not a cab. So then saying not a cab, fine. Not necessarily not a Merlot, but it needs more than that. Is it a Shiraz? Is this Syrah? We talked about that as one of those potential varietals. There's Traldigo, I think Kathy had up there earlier too. PV getting a couple votes. Primitivo, the stemminess is an indication maybe of not being Primitivo for Chris. The fruit for sure. Candy's throwing a little bit of shade toward Kevin, who's still in Italy, but he doesn't have a track record to back it up. Got it. Not Virginia, 100%, Chris is saying. And Jonathan's just throwing something in the dark, maybe like me too, and saying California's in. Okay. Ooh, Hungary. Candy's saying Jill's picking out something from Hungary. That's cool. Yeah, that Eastern European angle. Not really Virginia, though. It has that hot doggy water element that I have, like I said, tasted before in Virginia, but I'm not sure that's Virginia either. Montepulciano, coming from Kevin to kind of pull back into Italy there. And we've had some of this tannin from Montepulciano before, so wow. Sit with that for a minute. Tannin's all present and consistent. If we were in Uruguay per Gustavo before with that Tannat, it would seem to me a little bit more round, a touch softer. Hungarian bull's blood. I think I've tried that once. I don't know that I could help you with that. And therefore, by no means should you walk away from that idea because of me, as is evidenced by last week's Bobal experience. Call it if you have confidence in it, and especially if you've tasted it more than the one time I have. Go for it. So I'm going to walk away from Uruguay. The way this has evolved, I don't think this is California's in. It has a lot of Zinfandel-like properties, especially early on. Thank you, Erica, for that too. Go into the bull's blood more in description if you can, Candy, for all the rest of us. What now? Erica asks. Maybe you would respond for us. There is still fruit on it, even opened for the last 2 hours, by way of what Jan's telling us, 2.5 hours at this point. It's interesting how we kind of started off in a very New World description of this wine, and now are mostly entering or focused on sort of an Old World presentation, liking some of that Southern France element. I still like the Primitivo idea of the South. Random Italy is and should be a full-blown category for us. We've talked about it certainly on the white side, right? We've gotten through things where we work through, is it Chablis? No. Is it Albarino? No. Is it Alsatian Pinot Blanc? No. Then perhaps it's random white Italian. And I think we should be able to apply that potentially to reds. Nero d'Avola. Nero d'Avola. Wow. That's a fun idea, right? I mean, a lot of fruit, ample fruit, some tannin that's a little bit rustic. That smoky hot doggy water thing, could that be the volcanic element? Could that be the varietal? Or just sort of a yeast element? Oh, Croatian. Primitivo too. So 2018, we've got 2 votes in the way of Kristen and in, Susan for our 2018 Primitivo. It has, I mean, entry-level Primitivo, it usually has a lot of these characteristics, but it's a little bit softer. It doesn't have quite the same tannin profile. Jan's thrown out to not. It gets a little bit smoother and fruitier the longer it's open, that Glenn's noting, and I agree, it softens a bit. Croatia would be cool. Chris and Courtney are echoing that point. It could be. I mean, Croatian fruited and a little bit rustic. I haven't had a chance to try a lot of it, although I keep hearing great things about folks who got a chance to travel there and drink the wine there and say how much of an amazing experience it is to be in Croatia. And just Croatia alone, fine, but the actual wines too go along with it being really fun and unique and tasty and not things we see here on a regular basis. All right, I don't know. I really don't know. This is a stab in the dark, really. I mean, I think we've done a good job of outlining the profile of this wine, and that should take us somewhere specific, but it's hard to kind of pin down exactly. So where do you all want to be? A couple of you are at 2018 and Primitivo, so Italian Primitivo or Croatian Primitivo. A couple of you are PV, but not from Virginia. So where are you thinking we would go from Primitivo, the Primitivo standpoint? Kestenbaums, who are joining us this evening, what do you guys think? You're on the patio watching these storms roll through and tasting this wine. You should come up here and join me. What do you guys think? I don't know. I really don't know. Going back to Kathy's early list, Syrah. I'm not comfortable with Syrah as a single varietal or Shiraz. I don't think this is that. There was Petit Syrah. It has some of those elements, but walking away, most of us, from sort of that New World angle, that sort of California profile, I think we would be a little bit more plush, bigger fruit, maybe, a little less aggressive tannin profile. Zinfandel, same kind of conversation, a little bit more of that red fruit pronouncement and not quite the same rusticity of tannin, although there would be some. Okay, Eric is definitely throwing out Petit Verdot too, but where, I mean, where do you find varietal Petit Verdot? I mean, you get some from California, I guess, and you get some from Virginia, and you don't find much else elsewhere. Jonathan, you're going 50-50 California Zin or Rhone GSM. And the Rhone element really is a nice safe place to kind of hang out, and I'm not diminishing your 50-50 call there, because I think we could get some of those elements. But I'm thinking back to this idea that we had this tannin profile and this astringency. So somebody's doing either a multi-pick with something a little bit cool and something a little bit warm. Man, I don't know, there's almost this liqueur element now, this fruited liqueur. Kathy's not really feeling France because there's this rusticity to it, and she's wondering about Italy. You know, I think I work all of that. And Jonathan has learned how to hedge his bets thanks to politics. Well, at least there's something positive coming out of politics. You know how to play the middle. I keep waiting and hoping this wine will reveal more to me. A heavy PV on Bordeaux side of things. I mean, it's a good argument. It's hard to. it's hard for me to know where you would find a heavy PV in Bordeaux. Just by way of experience, I haven't tasted something like that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist by any means. So after tasting and tasting and tasting, that little stemminess, I want to be able to say, yeah, I think we could be in the southern part of France or southern part of Italy with a Primitivo-like wine with this tannin profile. I think that makes the most sense for what we've talked about for me, but that's also because I wouldn't be able to definitively describe a Hungarian bull's blood or to know definitively if we're in the world of Croatia and drinking a fun wine from there. And so what I'm saying is that I can't diminish those perspectives as I just get to a point where I have made myself the promise I have to put something down each and every week. I'll sit with the Primitivo idea of Italy, and I'll do that because some of the fruit profile, especially because the aroma of that grapiness to begin with, because the rustic element of tannin, but I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong. How about that? So, and if I pause another 2 minutes and think about it, I don't think I'm going to get anywhere different. So let's see. Gustavo, what do you think before I get to this point? Anybody else? Eric is Googling Hungarian bull's blood, and Robert is thinking Southern Italy, Primitivo. Hard to know. Just a hard wine to get, but a fun one. And that's a great thing, right? So when we have a chance. Dang. Okay. All right, everybody. Look at that. It's Petit Verdot. Petit Verdot. Wow. That is interesting. So an Italian Petit Verdot from Lazio, from the southern part of Italy, right? So it's southern Italy. And Gustavo's first thought was Italian. It's 14%, and it's 100% varietal Petit Verdot. So, I mean, like, nailed it. Not so much. Those of you that were on the PV wagon, good for you. I know the Swanbergs were right, and Kathy, you were hitting on some of that points, and others were too. But it had an Italian element to it, and it just, where have you tried a single varietal Petit Verdot? This is where Tony's digging into the stacks and finding some stuff that, wow, I don't know, you know, it had some of those elements, and I'm with you, Kathy. Like Fontana, that is. I've never really had a single varietal Petit Verdot from Italy, although Italians make everything, right? So, boom. And I said Southern Parley, but Lazio Roma, yeah, so more central. Thank you. So this is the larger appellation, central Italy, around Rome. Cool. Pretty interesting. You know, that's not something we get a chance to try very often, and frankly, not something I knew really existed by way of enough to plant to be able to produce a 100% varietal Petit Verdot. And that's pretty cool. I mean, I think, you know, Petit Verdot, Petit Manseng, things like this are what Virginia is doing extremely well right now in the context of leading a global conversation about what the varietal can do, especially where places aren't even considering it. And Italy is pretty open to experimenting and trying too, and clearly that's the example with this wine. So 2019, and that's pretty cool. Pretty special wine that stumped us for 45 minutes. So, Tony, way to go. And I guess more is to come, so we should all prepare ourselves for whatever we're talking about to be incorrect, and then go into that knowing that there's probably something more obscure, although I shouldn't say that fully because a number of you are already on the Petit Verdot bandwagon. It's just hard to place Petit Verdot in Italy. So, Candy, you are most welcome, and thank you for the 5th anniversary wishes. We're all delighted to be here 5 years in, and really enthused and excited about what the next period of time will bring for us, as I think we're poised to do some great stuff together. More of these wine tastings, but also just broadening the scope of how we fulfill our mission, which is to use food and drink to build connections and foster community. And this particular chat each Thursday night does all of that for me, and I hope it does that for you guys as well. So cheers, everybody, to the yummy, damn delicious Petit Verdot from Italy, to whatever is coming next week. I look forward to seeing you again at that point. Until then, be well and enjoy this little number, what remains of it. Cheers, everybody.